Today I'm going to explain why I decided to leave the Sony A6300 and sell it and revert back to the Lumix GH5 despite the many problems that I was having with it at launch. If you've been here on the channel for a while, then you would have known that I had been using the Sony A6300 primarily for a while for my music video projects. But before I even owned the Sony A6300, I was a primary Lumix user. I had the Lumix GH4 and I loved the Lumix GH4. There was a lot of things about that camera that I loved, and it still remains to be one of my favorite cameras to this day. So I went ahead and I picked up the Lumix GH5 at launch. This is my second one that I owned, as I said. And my reasoning behind selling the GH5 initially was I really wasn't in love with the Vlog L profile at all. The Metabone Speed Booster was having a bunch of problems at launch as well, and the 10-bit codec was basically unusable in Adobe Premiere at the time. We also have to add in the fact that I had become completely comfortable with using the Sony A6300. I had become comfortable with what the A6300 offered, and I was basically used to using the A6300 all around. Now, with me being comfortable with using the A6300, I felt like I didn't need the GH5, and I didn't need the GH5. I still don't need the GH5 to this day. Now, it wasn't until a few weeks ago where I really had to sit down and I had to edit a project. Now, this particular project, I had to shoot half of it on the GH5 and I had to shoot the other half on the Sony A6300 because I had decided to sell the GH5. Now, a lot of these scenes in this video were low light. I'll put up some shots of it on the screen right now. It's not released, but a lot of the scenes from this music video, they were like low light situations. And you know, you just naturally being an editor, you start to compare things. You start to compare footage from the GH5, you start to compare footage from the A6300. It gets you thinking about the things that you hate about the A6300. It gets you thinking about the things that you love about the GH5. And I kind of sat there and I thought about it. When I sat down and I compared these clips from both cameras, I was noticing so much more detail coming from the GH5. And not only that, I had to use the Ronin on both cameras, and when I sat and I looked at the footage and I was noticing how smooth the in-body image stabilization was on the GH5, I was like, man, this might look a lot better. I got to thinking about the things that the GH5 offered. I got to thinking about the things that the GH5 really messed up on at launch. And it was like, man, pretty much everything that I really had a problem with on the GH5 had been fixed by now. So I sat and thought about it, and as I said, this wasn't a necessary update for me. This wasn't a necessary upgrade, but the GH5 really did possess some things that I really wanted in a camera. When I initially made that jump from the GH4 to the A6300 because I sold it, it was so many things that I was just missing, and I really wanted those things back. One of those things being variable frame rates. I love the option to go in and change and be able to shoot at pretty much anywhere from 36 frames per second all the way up to 96 frames per second. And one thing that I really hate about the Sony A6300, the 4K quality on it is amazing, but the slow motion quality is just, oh my God, it's just so mushy. It's just so muddy. It's just not as crisp. And I have been noticing that. I've been using that camera for a while, and it's not something that was a big deal, but it's something that you notice after you use something for a while. The GH5 has a higher bit rate on those slow motion shots, so they're a lot more crispy, and I was seeing that in that video edit, and I got to thinking, I was like, man, maybe I should go back to the GH5. So to sum all of this up, a few things that I really was not liking about the A6300 was the fact that the bit rates on the slow motion were pretty much awful. If you were ever caught in a situation where you didn't have much light, the slow motion shots, anything 60 frames per second and above, basically just fell apart when you went to grading it. And as I said, this was all due to the low bit rates in the slow motion on the Sony. The rolling shutter on the Sony A6300 was pretty bad as well. The fact that it did not have in-body image stabilization had been turning me off from that camera for a while, but it wasn't a deal breaker basically. I'm one of those people who can use pretty much any camera in front of me, but these are just the things that were turning me away from the Sony. Now, a few things that made me want to go back to the GH5, the in-body image stabilization, of course. I had noticed it, I used it, I was able to really play around with it, and I noticed that it was just an amazing feature. It really smooths out the micro jitters and all the bumps and bounces that you get in the Ronin. Another thing that really made me want to go back to Lumix was the variable frame rate option. Now, this was pretty big. I love being able to go into those frame rates and switch things up. You get different feelings from different motions. You're not just bonded to using 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second. I would find myself wanting to use that little effect where you have the slow motion video but the lyrics are on sync, but I just wasn't able to do it on the Sony because you can really only use 60 and 120 frames per second. The higher bit rate on the slow motion shots on the GH5 was a plus to me as well. As I said, it really makes those slow motion shots a lot more crisp. The Metabones issue was fixed, the 10-bit, it's just a bunch of different things that made me want to really revert back to Lumix. I was thinking about everything that I loved in the GH4, and it was like, man, it would really only make sense for me to go back to the GH5. Now, this isn't a video crapping on the Sony at all, the cameras really don't matter at all. At the end of the day, it's all about picking a system that's best for you. A system that does what you needed to do and helps you achieve the things that you want to achieve as easy as possible. So with that being said, guys, I'm back on the Lumix GH5. There's going to be a lot of content coming from the GH5 pretty soon. I decided to pick up the 12 to 35mm lens with this as well. I vlog, guys. I needed something lightweight, something native that was going to help me be able to create these vlogs and be as comfortable as possible doing it. Now, I know that the autofocus on the GH5 sucks, but it has a swivel screen, so I'll be able to manual focus. And me personally, I'm not a person that really even likes autofocus like that. I hate looking at my footage and seeing the autofocus hunting for a focus point. I would rather just personally use peaking and do manual focusing, so that's not really a problem to me. Also, guys, if you did not know, Creative Ryan and I are running a giveaway right now until next Tuesday, which is August 2nd. Now, in that giveaway, we're giving away one LED panel, which is worth $500. It's the bendable one I did a review on. We're giving away merch, we're giving away LUTs, we're giving away Creative Ryan's video guide. It's a lot of things in the giveaway. I'm going to leave a link down in the description for you all to click on and check it out and answer if you did not do that already. Drop this video a like if you enjoyed this. Peace out, guys.